Logan Pierce never thought a 6-year-old's hand gesture could destroy someone. But when his son Mason signed a private symbol in front of his new teacher, one that only 3 people in the world should know, Elena Ward's coffee cup hit the floor and her face went white as bone. The wooden star pendant around Mason's neck suddenly felt heavy, because the boy who carved it, the boy who invented that sign, the boy who saved Logan's life when he was drowning in despair, he'd been dead for 2 years. And the woman standing frozen across from him, trembling like the ground had opened beneath her feet, was whispering one impossible sentence. That was my son. If you want to know how a ghost reached across time to connect 2 broken families, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Logan Pierce was late. Not dramatically late. Just the kind of late that made him feel like a bad father, which was pretty much his default state these days. He held Mason's hand as they crossed the parking lot of Riverside Elementary, both of them moving fast but not running, because running would make it worse. Mason's backpack bounced against his small shoulders, the blue fabric worn at the corners from 2 years of use. Logan had meant to buy him a new one. He'd meant to do a lot of things. "Sorry, buddy," Logan muttered, even though Mason couldn't hear him. Mason looked up anyway, caught the tension in his father's jaw, and squeezed his hand twice. "It's okay." That's what it meant. They had a whole language of squeezes and taps built over 6 years of trial and error, frustration, and breakthrough. Some people thought it was sweet. Logan thought it was survival. The school smelled like disinfectant and old carpet. The hallways were too bright, fluorescent lights humming overhead in that way that made Logan's teeth ache. They passed construction paper turkeys taped to bulletin boards, student artwork that all looked the same, the kind of institutional cheerfulness that made him feel claustrophobic. Mason didn't seem to mind. He walked beside his father with the quiet confidence of a kid who'd learned early that the world wasn't going to accommodate him, so he'd better accommodate it. Room 14 was at the end of the hall. The door was open. Logan knocked anyway, 2 quick raps against the doorframe, and stepped inside. The classroom was empty except for one woman sitting behind the teacher's desk. She looked up when they entered, and Logan felt that weird jolt you get when someone is prettier than you expected. Dark hair pulled back in a loose bun, wire-rimmed glasses, a navy cardigan over a white blouse that looked crisp and professional in a way that made Logan suddenly aware of his wrinkled flannel shirt, and the fact that he'd forgotten to shave that morning. She stood, smiled, extended her hand. "Mr. Pierce?" "Logan?" he said, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm. "Sorry we're late." "You're not," she said, glancing at the clock. "Right on time, actually." That made him feel worse somehow. She crouched down to Mason's level, and Logan felt himself tense without meaning to. People always did this. Got too close, spoke too loud, didn't understand. But this woman didn't do any of that. She just smiled, gentle and real, and signed with careful, deliberate hands. "Hello, Mason. I'm Miss Ward." Mason's whole face changed. He signed back, his small hands moving fast. "You know sign language?" "I do," she signed. "We're going to have a good year." Logan felt something in his chest loosen, just a fraction. He'd been bracing for another year of awkward parent-teacher conferences, of well-meaning educators who didn't know what to do with a deaf kid, of Mason being the square peg everyone tried to jam into a round hole. But this woman, Ms. Ward, she got it. Or at least she seemed to. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to the small table by the window. 2 adult-sized chairs had been set up, along with a third smaller one for Mason. A coffee pot sat on the corner of her desk, 2 mugs beside it. "Coffee?" "Yeah," Logan said. "Thanks." She poured him a cup, black, and one for herself. Mason climbed into his chair and pulled out a small wooden star pendant from under his shirt, the one he always wore on a leather cord around his neck. He held it between his fingers, turning it over and over, the way he did when he was nervous or thinking. The wood was smooth from years of handling, the edges worn soft. Ms. Ward set the coffee mugs on the table and sat down across from Logan. Up close, he could see faint lines around her eyes, the kind that came from smiling or squinting, or maybe not sleeping enough. She folded her hands on the table, professional, composed. "So," she said, "I wanted to meet with you early in the year to talk about Mason's needs. I know he's been in the district since kindergarten, but I like to start fresh with every student. Get a sense of what works, what doesn't. Logan nodded. He'd had this conversation before, multiple times. He knew his lines. Mason's been doing okay, he said. Last year was rough, but he adjusted. He's a good kid, smart, just, needs some extra support. I can see that, Ms. Ward said. She pulled out a folder, flipped it open. Logan caught a glimpse of Mason's file, test scores, IEP notes, behavioral observations. His reading comprehension is above grade level. Math is strong. Socially, he tends to keep to himself, but that's not uncommon. He's had a hard time making friends, Logan admitted. It hurt to say out loud. Kids don't always know how to talk to him, and he doesn't push it. Miss Ward glanced at Mason, who was still turning the wooden star over in his hands, oblivious to their conversation. Her expression softened. I'll work on that, she said. I've got a few students who are already learning basic sign. We'll build a bridge. Logan wanted to believe her. He really did. They talked for a while longer, logistics, schedules, classroom accommodations. Ms. Ward was thorough, asked good questions, took notes in neat handwriting. Logan found himself relaxing, just a little. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe Mason would finally find his footing. Then Mason signed something, casual and unprompted, his hands moving in a quick, fluid gesture that Logan recognized instantly. It was a sign they'd invented together. Not ASL. Not anything official, just something private, something that belonged to them. Mason's hands opened like wings, fingers spread wide, then curled inward toward his chest. Safe. That's what it meant. Or maybe home. Logan had never been entirely sure. It was one of those things that didn't need translation because the feeling was enough. Mason signed it toward Ms. Ward, smiling, like he was sharing a secret. And Miss Ward's coffee cup slipped from her hand. It hit the table, tipped, spilled dark liquid across the surface. She jerked back, stood, grabbed napkins from her desk. But her hands were shaking. Logan could see it, even as she tried to clean up the mess, even as she laughed and said, "Sorry, clumsy," in a voice that didn't sound like hers. Logan grabbed more napkins, helped mop up the coffee, but his eyes stayed on her face. She wasn't looking at the spill. She was looking at Mason, at his hands, at the wooden star pendant hanging against his chest. "Where did he learn that?" she asked quietly. Logan frowned. "Learn what?" "That sign." Her voice was tight. "The one he just did." "Oh." Logan glanced at Mason, who was watching them both with wide, curious eyes. "That's just something we made up a couple years ago." "You made it up?" "Yeah, not exactly. There was this kid I met once. Logan stopped because Miss Ward's face had gone completely white. Not pale. White. Like someone had drained every drop of blood from her body. She sat down hard in her chair, napkin still clutched in one hand, staring at Mason like he was a ghost. "Ms. Ward?" Logan said. "You okay?" She didn't answer. She just kept staring at Mason, at the pendant, her breathing shallow and fast. Logan felt alarm bells going off in his head, the kind of instinct you develop as a parent when something is very, very wrong. "Do you need me to call someone?" he asked, already reaching for his phone. "No." Her voice was barely a whisper. She closed her eyes, pressed her fingers to her temples, took a long, shaky breath. When she opened her eyes again, they were wet. "I'm sorry, She looked at Logan, and there was something raw and desperate in her expression, something that made his stomach drop. "Where did you get that pendant?" Logan blinked. "The one Mason's wearing?" "Yes." "It was a gift," Logan said slowly. "From a kid I met years ago." "What kid?" Logan hesitated. This felt wrong, invasive, like he was being interrogated. But Miss Ward's hands were still shaking, and her eyes were locked on that wooden star like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. "His name was Theo," Logan said quietly. Miss Ward made a sound, half gasp, half sob, and covered her mouth with her hand. Logan's heart was pounding now. "Miss Ward, what's going on?" She shook her head, couldn't speak, just sat there trembling while tears slid down her face. Mason watched her, confused, then looked at his father for an explanation. Logan didn't have one. Maybe we should go, Logan said, standing. He reached for Mason's hand, but Ms. Ward's voice stopped him. Please don't. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Logan sat back down. Ms. Ward wiped her face with the back of her hand, smudging mascara across her cheek. She looked wrecked, broken, like someone had reached into her chest and crushed something vital. Tell me about Theo, she said. Logan didn't know what else to do, so he told her. It had been 4 years ago, maybe 5. Logan's memory of that time was blurry, waterlogged, like trying to see through fogged glass. Mason had been 2, maybe 3, and Logan had been drowning. Not literally, but close enough. Mason's diagnosis had come early, profound hearing loss, both ears, no clear cause. The doctors had been calm and clinical, like they were reading a grocery list. Hearing aids wouldn't help much. Cochlear implants were an option, but not a guarantee. Logan needed to start learning sign language immediately. Mason's development depended on it. Logan had tried. He'd bought books, watched videos, practiced in the mirror, but it wasn't enough. He was stumbling through parenthood alone. Mason's mother had left 6 months after the diagnosis, couldn't handle it, couldn't handle him, and every day felt like drowning a little more. Someone at the clinic had suggested a support group. Logan hated support groups, hated the forced cheerfulness, the platitudes, the way everyone pretended their lives weren't falling apart. But he went anyway, because what else was he going to do? The group met at a community center across town, a low brick building with peeling paint and a parking lot full of potholes. Inside it smelled like burnt coffee and old books. A dozen people sat in a circle of folding chairs, talking about their kids, their struggles, their tiny victories. Logan sat in the back and didn't say a word. That's where he met Theo. The boy was sitting alone in the corner of the room, drawing in a sketchbook. He couldn't have been more than 10, maybe 11, small for his age with dark hair that fell into his eyes. He didn't look up when Logan walked past, just kept drawing, his pencil moving in quick, confident strokes. Logan didn't think much of it. Kids were always around these places, siblings, patients, whoever. But when the meeting ended and everyone started filtering out, the boy was still there, still drawing. Logan found himself walking over, curious. You waiting for someone? Logan asked. The boy looked up. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, older than they should have been. He didn't say anything, just turned his sketchbook around. It was a drawing of the room, the circle of chairs, the people, the fluorescent lights overhead. But it wasn't realistic. It was strange, almost dreamlike, with shadows that stretched too long and faces that blurred into abstraction. It was beautiful and unsettling at the same time. That's really good, Logan said. The boy tilted his head, considering. Then he flipped to a new page and started drawing again. Logan watched for a moment, then sat down in the chair beside him. I'm Logan, he said. The boy didn't respond, just kept drawing. Logan figured maybe he was shy, or maybe he didn't want to talk. And that was fine. He sat there in silence, watching the pencil move across the page. After a while, the boy stopped. He looked at Logan, really looked at him, and then his hands moved. It took Logan a second to realize he was signing. You have a son, the boy signed. Logan blinked. Yeah, how did you... You look sad. Logan didn't know what to say to that. The boy kept signing, slow and deliberate, like he wanted to make sure Logan understood. Is he deaf? Logan nodded. Do you know how to talk to him? I'm trying, Logan said. His voice cracked a little. He cleared his throat. It's hard. The boy nodded, like that made perfect sense. Then he set down his sketchbook, and for the next hour he taught Logan how to sign. Not the basics, not the alphabet or simple phrases. The boy taught him the things that mattered. How to say I love you in a way that felt real. How to shape I'm here so it didn't sound like an obligation. How to make safe feel like a promise instead of a word. And somewhere in the middle of it all, he invented a sign that didn't exist in any official language. Hands opening like wings, fingers spread wide, then curling inward toward the chest. He didn't explain what it meant. He just showed Logan, and Logan understood. When the janitor came to lock up the building, the boy packed up his sketchbook and left without saying goodbye. Logan didn't see him again, but he came back the next week, and the week after that. And every time the boy was there, sitting in the same corner, drawing in his sketchbook. And every time Logan sat with him, and the boy taught him something new. They didn't talk much. The boy didn't seem to like talking, but he communicated in other ways, through signs, through drawings, through the quiet intensity of his presence. He showed Logan how to build a language with his hands, how to create meaning out of gestures, how to connect with his son in a way that went deeper than words. And slowly, painfully, Logan started to believe that maybe he could do this. Maybe he could be the father Mason needed. One night, near the end, the boy gave him the wooden star pendant. He didn't say why, just handed it over, carved smooth and perfect, a tiny loop at the top for a cord. Logan had stared at it, confused. "For your son," the boy signed. "So he knows." "Knows what?" Logan asked. The boy smiled, sad and knowing, and signed the gesture he'd invented, hands opening like wings, that someone sees him. Logan had put the pendant on a leather cord and given it to Mason the next day. Mason had worn it ever since. Logan went back to the community center the following week, but the boy wasn't there, or the week after that. Eventually, Logan stopped going. Life got busy. Mason started school. The memories blurred, but he never forgot Theo. So Logan finished talking and the classroom was silent. Miss Ward sat across from him, her face streaked with tears, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. She was staring at Mason, at the pendant, at the boy who wore the ghost of her son around his neck. "That was Theo," she whispered. "That was my son." Logan felt the air leave his lungs. "You're my son," her voice broke. "Theo Ward. He died 2 years ago." The room tilted. Logan gripped the edge of the table, trying to process, trying to make sense of this impossible thing. The boy who'd saved him. The boy who'd taught him how to be a father. The boy who'd carved that pendant with his own hands. He was hers. "I don't understand," Logan said. "He was at the community center. He was sick," Ms. Ward said. Her voice was hollow, scraped raw. "Terminal. He'd been in and out of treatment centers for years. I wasn't there. I was working. I was always working. I thought I had time. I thought—" She broke off, covered her face with her hands. "I thought I'd fix everything later, but there was no later." Logan didn't know what to say. There were no words for this. Mason, oblivious to the weight of the moment, signed to his father. "Is she okay?" Logan signed back. "I don't know." Ms. Ward lowered her hands. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy, but there was something fierce in her expression now, something desperate. "Show me the sign again," she said. Logan hesitated. "I don't think—" "Please." He looked at Mason, then back at her. Slowly, carefully, he lifted his hands and made the gesture, hands opening like wings, fingers spread wide, then curling inward toward his chest. Ms. Ward's breath hitched. She raised her own hands, mirrored the movement, perfect and exact, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Mason's eyes went wide. He signed it back to her, excited, like he'd just found someone who spoke his secret language. And Ms. Ward started to cry again, but this time it was different. This time it wasn't grief. It was recognition, connection, the brutal, beautiful agony of seeing your child in someone else's hands. Logan sat there, frozen, watching two people communicate in a language invented by a boy who no longer existed. And for the first time in his life, he understood what Theo had been trying to tell him. Someone sees him, not just Mason, all of them. The meeting was supposed to last 30 minutes. It lasted 2 hours. Ms. Ward asked questions Logan didn't know he had answers to. What did Theo draw? What did he say? How did he move? How did he laugh? What were the small, specific details that made him real? Logan told her everything he could remember. The way Theo tilted his head when he was thinking. The crooked smile he gave when Logan got a sign wrong. The drawings, always drawings, hundreds of them, filled with shadows and light and things Logan couldn't name. "He never showed me his work," Ms. Ward said quietly. "I asked, but he said it wasn't ready. He said he was saving it for something." Logan thought about the sketchbook, the boy hunched over it in the corner of that fluorescent-lit room, creating worlds with a pencil. "He was brilliant," Logan said. "I don't know if you knew that, but he was." "I knew." Her voice was thick. "I just didn't know him." The truth of it hung in the air between them, ugly and undeniable. Mason had fallen asleep in his chair, head pillowed on his arms, the wooden star pendant resting against the table. Miss Ward reached out, almost touched it, then pulled her hand back like it burned. "Can I ask you something?" Logan said. She nodded. "Why didn't you tell me? When we walked in, when you saw the pendant, why didn't you say something right away?" Miss Ward smiled, bitter and broken. "Because I didn't believe it. I thought I was seeing things. Grief does that sometimes. Makes you see what you want to see." She looked at Mason, at the pendant, at the impossible proof. "But then he made the sign, and I knew." "Knew what?" "That my son gave me one last gift." She met Logan's eyes, and hers were full of tears again, but also something else, something like hope. "He sent me you." Logan didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if he believed it, but sitting there in that too bright classroom, with his son asleep and a stranger's grief wrapped around them both like a shroud, he thought maybe it didn't matter. Maybe some things didn't need belief. Maybe they just needed to be true. Logan carried Mason to the car. The boy didn't wake up, just curled against his father's chest, warm and trusting. Miss Ward walked them out, her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding something fragile. "Thank you," she said at the door. "For what?" "For telling me." She looked at Mason, at the pendant glinting in the parking lot lights. "For letting me see him one more time." Logan wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease the raw ache in her voice. But he'd learned a long time ago that some pain couldn't be fixed with words. So he just nodded and carried his son to the car and drove home through the dark. That night, after Mason was in bed, Logan sat at the kitchen table and thought about Theo. About the boy who'd saved his life without even trying. About the mother who'd lost hers. He thought about the pendant, the sign, the invisible thread that connected them all. And he wondered if Theo had known. If somehow, in that quiet, brilliant mind of his, he'd understood that the things he created would outlive him. That his hands would keep moving long after they stopped. Logan didn't sleep much that night, but when he finally did, he dreamed of a boy with dark hair and knowing eyes, sitting in a corner drawing something beautiful and strange. And in the dream, the boy looked up and smiled. "Someone sees you," he signed. Logan woke up with tears on his face. Logan didn't go back to the school for 3 days. He told himself it was because Mason seemed fine, adjusted, happy even. The kid came home every afternoon with drawings and worksheets, his backpack stuffed with the evidence of a normal school day. Miss Ward sent home progress notes that were professional and warm, the kind of thing any good teacher would write. There was no reason to go back. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. Logan didn't know how to face her. What do you say to someone whose dead son saved your life? What do you do with the weight of that? Logan had spent 3 nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation he'd ever had with Theo, every gesture, every drawing, trying to find meaning in memories that had seemed insignificant at the time. On the 4th day, Ms. Ward called him. Logan was at work when his phone buzzed, elbow deep in a kitchen sink that had been leaking for 2 weeks. He was a handyman, decent pay, flexible hours, the kind of job that let him pick Mason up from school every day. He pulled his phone from his pocket with wet hands, saw the school's number on the screen, and his stomach dropped. "Hello? Mr. Pierce?" Her voice was steady, professional, like the other night had never happened. "This is Elena Ward. Do you have a minute?" Logan wiped his hands on his jeans. "Yeah, is Mason okay?" "He's fine," she said quickly. "Great, actually. I'm calling about something else." A pause. "I was wondering if we could meet, outside of school, just to talk." Logan's first instinct was to say no, to make an excuse, to put distance between himself and this woman who carried grief like a second skin. But something in her voice stopped him. It wasn't desperation, it was something quieter, something like hope. "Okay," he said. "When?" "Tonight? There's a coffee shop on 5th Street, Crescent Moon. Do you know it?" "I'll find it." 7 o'clock? "Yeah." Logan hesitated. "Ms. Ward." "Elena?" she said. "Please, just Elena." He met her at 7. The coffee shop was one of those places that tried too hard to be cozy, exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, string lights draped across the ceiling. It smelled like espresso and cinnamon, and a jazz quartet played softly from speakers Logan couldn't see. Elena was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. She looked different outside the classroom, smaller somehow, more human. "I didn't know what you liked," she said when Logan sat down. "So I got you black coffee. If that's wrong, I can—" "It's fine," Logan said. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a moment, both of them staring at their cups like the answers might be written in the foam. Around them, the coffee shop hummed with conversation, college students hunched over laptops, couples on first dates, a mother trying to keep her toddler from knocking over a display of travel mugs. Normal life, the kind that kept moving whether you were ready or not. Elena spoke first. "I've been thinking about what you told me," she said, "about Theo, about the community center." She wrapped her hands around her cup, holding it like it might steady her. "I need to know more." Logan shifted in his chair. "I told you everything I remember." "I know, but I need the details, the things you might not think matter." She looked at him, and her eyes were clear but intense. "What did he smell like?" The question caught Logan off guard. "What?" "What did he smell like?" Elena repeated. "When you sat next to him, what do you remember?" Logan thought about it, closed his eyes, tried to pull the memory into focus. "Pencil shavings," he said finally. "And something else. Something clean. Maybe soap." Elena's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back. "Lavender. His shampoo. He hated it, but I kept buying it because it was the only thing that didn't irritate his scalp." She laughed, wet and broken. "He used to complain every time I washed his hair." Logan didn't know what to say to that. "What else?" Elena asked. "What did his voice sound like?" "He didn't talk much," Logan said. "Mostly signed, but when he did talk, it was quiet. Soft. Like he was telling you a secret even when he wasn't." Elena nodded like she already knew. "He had nodes on his vocal cords, from the treatments. It hurt him to talk, so he stopped trying." She looked down at her coffee. "I didn't know that until after. Until it was too late to ask." The guilt in her voice was thick enough to drown in. Logan took a sip of his coffee, giving her time to compose herself. When she looked up again, her face was calmer, but no less raw. "I want to tell you something," she said, "about who I was, before." "You don't have to "I do." She cut him off, not unkindly. "You knew my son better than I did. You deserve to know why." Logan waited. Elena took a breath, and when she spoke, her voice was flat, clinical, like she was reading from a script she'd memorized. 10 years ago, I was a different person. I ran a consulting firm, corporate strategy, high-level clients, the kind of work that sounds impressive at dinner parties. I was good at it, really good. I made a lot of money. I had a lot of power. She paused. "And I had a son who was dying and I wasn't there." Logan felt something cold settle in his chest. "Theo was diagnosed when he was 6, Elena continued, neuroblastoma. Aggressive. The doctors said we had maybe 2 years if we were lucky. So I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I threw money at it. The best hospitals, the best specialists, experimental treatments that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. I set him up in a private facility where he could get round-the-clock care. I thought I was saving him." "You were trying," Logan said quietly. "No." Elena's voice was sharp. "I was running. I was terrified of watching him die, so I paid other people to do it for me. I visited once a month if I was lucky, sent gifts, called on his birthday. Told myself I was doing the right thing because the numbers in my bank account kept going up and the facility kept telling me he was stable." She stopped, pressed her fingers to her temples. "He lived for 4 years, she said. 4 years in that place, and I wasn't there. I was in boardrooms. I was closing deals. I was building something that didn't matter." Her voice cracked. "And when he finally died, I wasn't even in the same state. I got the call in the middle of a meeting. They told me he'd passed an hour ago, peaceful, surrounded by staff." Logan's throat felt tight. "I quit the next day," Elena said. "Sold the company, donated the money, Burned it all down. I thought if I could just erase that version of myself, I could fix it. I could become someone better. So I went back to school, got my teaching degree, decided I'd spend the rest of my life helping kids like Theo, kids who needed someone to see them. She looked at Logan, and her eyes were full of something desperate and aching. But it doesn't fix it, she said. It doesn't bring him back. It doesn't change the fact that I failed him every single day of his life. Logan didn't have an answer for that, didn't have platitudes or comfort, so he just sat there, holding space for her grief the way Theo had once held space for his. After a long silence, Elena spoke again. He kept a journal, she said. I found it after he died. The facility gave me a box of his things, clothes, drawings, books. The journal was at the bottom. Brown leather, pages filled with his handwriting. She pulled a small notebook from her bag and set it on the table between them. I couldn't read it, not for 2 years. I kept it in a drawer and pretended it didn't exist. But after I met you, after I saw Mason, she pushed the journal toward Logan. I read it. Logan stared at the notebook. It looked old, worn, the leather cover creased from use. What did it say? He asked. Elena opened it, flipped through pages covered in cramped, careful handwriting. Some pages had sketches in the margins, trees, faces, abstract patterns that seemed to move in the dim light. She stopped on a page near the middle and turned it so Logan could see. The entry was dated 4 years ago, the same time Logan had been going to the community center. Read it, Elena said. Logan read. There's a man who comes to the center on Thursdays. He looks sad, not the kind of sad that people wear on their faces, the kind that lives behind their eyes. He has a son. I can tell because he keeps checking his phone, and every time he does, his expression changes, like he's remembering something important. I don't think he knows how to help his son. I don't think he knows how to help himself. I'm going to teach him. Logan's hands were shaking. He kept reading. The man's name is Logan. He told me today. He didn't ask mine, which I liked. People always ask my name like it's the first step to knowing me, but names don't mean anything. Actions do. I taught him how to sign I love you today. He got it wrong 3 times, but on the 4th try, his hands looked like they meant it. I think he's going to be okay. I made him something, a pendant. I'll give it to him when it's ready. Not for him, for his son. So the son knows that someone sees him, even when his father can't find the words. Logan couldn't read anymore. His vision was blurring, chest tight, breath coming in short gasps. He closed the journal and pushed it back across the table. He knew, Logan said. His voice was rough. He knew exactly what I needed. He always did, Elena said softly. He saw people, really saw them. I think that's why he loved drawing so much. He was trying to capture what he saw, the truth underneath. Logan wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand. Across the coffee shop, life continued. Someone laughed. A barista called out an order. The world didn't stop just because his heart was breaking. There's more, Elena said. She flipped to the last entry in the journal, dated 2 weeks before Theo died. Read this one. Logan didn't want to, but he did anyway. I'm tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Dr. Reyes says I have maybe a month left, maybe less. I'm not scared of dying. I'm scared of being forgotten. I've been thinking about the people I've met, the ones I tried to help. I wonder if they remember me. I wonder if the things I made will last longer than I do. I gave Logan the pendant yesterday. He didn't know what to say, so he just held it and looked at me like I'd given him something impossible. I told him it was for his son. I didn't tell him it was also for me, a way to keep existing after I'm gone. Maybe that's selfish, but I don't care. I want to matter. I want my hands to keep moving even when they stop. The entry ended there. Logan closed the journal and sat back, feeling like he'd been gutted. Around them, the coffee shop continued its oblivious hum, and he wanted to scream at all of them, to make them stop and pay attention to the fact that a 10-year-old kid had understood life better than most adults ever would. But he didn't scream. He just sat there, broken and aching, while Elena watched him with eyes that knew exactly what he was feeling. He mattered, Logan said finally. If that's what he was worried about, he mattered. Elena smiled, sad and grateful. I know, because of you. They sat in silence for a long time after that. Not uncomfortable, just heavy, the kind of quiet that follows truth. Eventually, Elena spoke again. "I have an idea," she said, "and I need your help." Logan looked at her. "I want to build something," she said. "In Theo's name, a place where kids like Mason can go, where they can learn, communicate, belong. A center that actually sees them." She leaned forward, and there was fire in her eyes now, the kind that came from grief turned into purpose. "I have the money. I have the connections. What I don't have is someone who understands what it's like to be on the other side, someone who knows what parents like you need." Logan's chest felt tight. "You want me to help you build a center?" "I want you to help me build Theo's legacy," Elena said. "He spent his whole life trying to connect people. Let's finish what he started." Logan thought about Mason, about the pendant, about Theo sitting in that corner, drawing worlds into existence with a pencil. "Okay," he said. Elena's face broke into the first real smile he'd seen from her. It was small and fragile, but it was there. "Okay," she repeated. They talked for 2 more hours. Elena pulled out notebooks, sketches, plans she'd been drafting in the weeks since Theo's death, but had never had the courage to pursue. She talked about adaptive technology, sensory-friendly spaces, staff trained in multiple communication methods. She talked about making a place where deaf kids and autistic kids and kids with disabilities that didn't have names yet could exist without having to shrink themselves to fit. Logan listened, asked questions, offered ideas based on his own experience. He told her about the isolation, the frustration, the small humiliations of navigating a world that wasn't built for Mason. He told her about the things that had helped and the things that had hurt, and Elena wrote it all down in quick, efficient handwriting. By the time they left the coffee shop, the plan had bones. Not a finished structure, but the beginning of one. As they stood in the parking lot, Elena hesitated, then pulled something from her bag. A photograph, edges worn from handling. She held it out to Logan. It was Theo. Younger than Logan remembered, maybe 8 or 9, sitting cross-legged on a hospital bed with a sketchbook in his lap. He was smiling at the camera, but his eyes looked tired. Too tired for a kid. "Keep it," Elena said when Logan tried to hand it back. "I have others. I thought you should have a picture, so you don't forget what he looked like." Logan stared at the photo, at the boy who'd saved him without asking for anything in return. "I won't forget," he said. Elena nodded, wiped her eyes, and walked to her car. Logan stood there for a long time after she left, holding the photograph under the parking lot lights, trying to reconcile the boy in the picture with the ghost he'd been carrying in his memory. When he finally got home, Mason was asleep on the couch, the wooden star pendant resting against his chest, rising and falling with each breath. The babysitter, a college student from down the street, was watching TV with the volume low. "He was good," she said when Logan paid her. "Ate all his dinner, did his homework, went down easy." Logan thanked her, locked the door behind her, and stood in the dark living room watching his son sleep. He thought about Theo's journal, about the entry that said, "I want my hands to keep moving even when they stop." Logan reached out and adjusted the pendant so it lay flat against Mason's shirt. The wood was warm from the boy's skin, smooth from years of wear. "They are," Logan whispered. "Your hands are still moving." Mason stirred but didn't wake. Logan carried him to bed, tucked him in, and sat on the edge of the mattress for a long time. He thought about Elena's plan, about the center they were going to build, about the kids who would walk through its doors and find a place where they belonged. He thought about Theo, sitting in that corner, drawing futures he'd never see. And for the first time in years, Logan felt something that wasn't just survival. It was purpose, direction. The sense that maybe, just maybe, his life was moving towards something that mattered. He fell asleep in the chair beside Mason's bed, the photograph of Theo clutched in his hand, and dreamed of a building that didn't exist yet, but would. The next morning, Logan called in sick to work. He dropped Mason off at school and drove across town to the lot Elena had mentioned during their meeting. It was an empty space downtown, wedged between a library and a park, overgrown with weeds and littered with debris. A chain-link fence surrounded it, sagging in places, rusted through in others. Logan stood at the fence and tried to imagine what Elena saw. A building, a center, a place where kids like Mason could exist without apology. He couldn't see it yet, but he trusted that it was there. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Met with the architect. He can start drawings next week. Can you come by the school after dismissal? I want to show you something. Logan texted back. I'll be there. That afternoon, he picked Mason up from school and followed Elena to her classroom. She'd cleared the desks to the edges of the room, creating a wide-open space in the center. On the floor, she'd spread out dozens of drawings, all of them Theo's, pulled from the boxes the facility had returned. I didn't know he'd made this many, Elena said, kneeling beside the drawings. There are hundreds, maybe thousands. The facility said he drew every day. Logan knelt beside her, looking at the images spread across the floor. They were beautiful and strange, just like he remembered. Shadows that moved, faces that blurred, trees with roots that looked like veins, and scattered throughout, recurring images. Hands opening like wings, wooden stars, boys with tired eyes. He was documenting something, Logan said. I don't know what, but it meant something to him. Elena nodded. She picked up one of the drawings, a sketch of the community center where Logan had met Theo. But in the drawing, the building was different, brighter. The windows glowed with warm light, and people stood outside, their faces turned upward like they were looking at something beautiful. He saw the world as it could be, Elena said quietly. Not as it was. Logan looked at the drawing, at the hope embedded in every pencil stroke, and felt something shift inside him. We're going to build that, he said. The place he drew, we're going to make it real. Elena looked at him, and for the first time since they'd met, she looked something other than broken. She looked determined. Yes, she said. We are. Mason, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, got up and walked over to the drawings. He knelt beside them, his small hands hovering over the images, not touching, but examining. Then he looked up at his father and signed, Who made these? Logan hesitated, glanced at Elena. She nodded. Logan signed back. A friend. Someone who wanted to help people. Mason studied the drawings for a long moment. Then he picked up the one of the community center, the one with the glowing windows and upturned faces, and held it carefully in both hands. It's beautiful, he signed. Logan's throat went tight. He looked at Elena, and she was crying again, but this time she was smiling too. Yeah, Logan said aloud, even though Mason couldn't hear him. It really is. They stayed in the classroom until the sun set, sorting through Theo's drawings, trying to find the thread that connected them all. And slowly, piece by piece, a vision began to emerge. Not just a building, not just a center, a legacy. The architect's name was David Chen, and he didn't understand what they wanted. Logan could see it in the way the man kept glancing between the drawings spread across the conference table and Elena's face, like he was waiting for someone to admit this was a joke. They were sitting in a glass-walled office downtown, 20 stories up. The city stretched out below them like a circuit board. David's portfolio was impressive. Sleek corporate buildings, modern museums, the kind of structures that looked good in magazines. But this wasn't that. So you want a community center, David said slowly, tapping his pen against his notepad. For kids with disabilities. Sensory-friendly design, adaptive technology, multiple communication methods. He paused. But you also want it to look like this. He gestured at one of Theo's drawings, the one Mason had picked up. The community center with glowing windows and people looking upward at something invisible. The proportions were wrong, dreamlike. The building seemed to lean toward the viewer, welcoming and strange at the same time. Yes, Elena said. David set down his pen. Ms. Ward, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, but that drawing, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but it's not architecturally sound. The angles don't work. The windows are too large. The entrance is... Perfect, Logan interrupted. David looked at him, surprised. Logan had barely spoken since they'd arrived, letting Elena handle the business side while he sat there feeling out of place in his work boots and flannel shirt. But he was tired of listening to this guy pick apart Theo's vision. The entrance is perfect, Logan repeated. It's wide, no steps. The door doesn't look like a door. It looks like an opening, like you're supposed to walk through it. That's the whole point. David frowned. Mr. Pierce, Logan. Logan, I understand the emotional connection here, but architecture isn't about feelings. It's about structure, function, safety codes. It's about people, Elena said quietly. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. And the people who are going to use this building need it to feel like that drawing, not just function like it, feel like it. David sat back in his chair, clearly struggling with how to respond. Logan watched him, watched the calculations happening behind his eyes. This was a big commission. Elena had money, connections, the kind of project that could make a career. But it was also weird, risky, the kind of thing that might end up in a design blog as a cautionary tale. Give me a week, David said finally. Let me see what I can do. You have 3 days, Elena said. After that, I'm finding someone else. David's eyebrows went up, but he nodded. 3 days. They left the office and took the elevator down in silence. Logan could feel the tension radiating off Elena. The way she stood too straight, jaw too tight. When they hit the lobby, she walked straight past the doors and into the attached coffee shop, ordered a black coffee, and sat down at a table by the window. Logan followed, got himself a coffee, sat across from her. He's going to bail, Elena said. She wasn't looking at Logan, just staring out at the street. He thinks we're crazy. Maybe we are, Logan said. Elena's eyes snapped to his, sharp and defensive. Then she saw his expression, and her face softened. You don't believe that? No, Logan admitted. But I get why he's confused. We're asking him to build something that doesn't make sense on paper. Theo didn't make sense on paper either, Elena said. But he was real, and this is going to be real too. Logan took a sip of his coffee. It was too hot, burned his tongue, but he didn't care. What if we can't find an architect who gets it? Then I'll learn architecture myself and build the damn thing with my bare hands. Logan believed her. They sat there for a while, watching people pass by on the sidewalk outside. Business suits and yoga pants, strollers and skateboards, everyone moving with purpose toward destinations Logan couldn't see. He thought about Theo, about the way the kid had moved through the world, quiet, deliberate, like he was part of something bigger than himself. Can I ask you something? Logan said. Elena nodded. Why didn't you read the journal sooner, after he died? Why wait 2 years? Elena's hands tightened around her coffee cup. For a moment, Logan thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she took a breath and spoke. Because I was afraid, she said. Afraid of what he'd written about me, about how I'd failed him. She looked at Logan, and her eyes were raw. I knew he was smart. I knew he saw things other people didn't. And I thought if I opened that journal, I'd see myself through his eyes. The real version. The one I'd been running from. And did you? Logan asked quietly. Elena smiled, bitter and sad. No, he barely mentioned me. A few lines here and there. Mom called today. Mom sent a gift. Things like that. But mostly it was about other people. The nurses. The other kids. You. She paused. I wasn't even important enough to hate. Logan didn't know what to say to that. The grief in her voice was so thick he could almost touch it. But there was one entry, Elena continued. Near the end, he wrote, I wish Mom knew that I don't blame her. I just wish she was here. Her voice cracked. That's what he wanted. Not money, not the best doctors, just me. And I couldn't even give him that. Logan reached across the table and put his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. You're here now, he said. That's what matters. He's dead, Logan. Being here now doesn't change that. No, Logan agreed, but it changes what comes next. And he'd care about that. I know he would. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. She pulled her hand back, wiped her eyes, and stood up. Come on, I want to show you something. They drove across town to a storage unit on the east side, one of those industrial complexes with rows of identical garage doors painted industrial beige. Elena unlocked Unit 47 and rolled up the door, revealing a space-packed floor to ceiling with boxes. This is everything, she said. Everything the facility sent me. I couldn't throw it away, but I couldn't look at it either. So I just stored it. Logan stepped inside. The air smelled like cardboard and dust. He could see labels on some of the boxes: clothes, books, medical records, art supplies. A whole life compressed into storage. Elena walked to the back of the unit and pulled out a large flat box. She opened it carefully, like she was handling something fragile, and lifted out a canvas. It was bigger than the drawings Logan had seen before, maybe 3 feet by 4 feet. And it was different. Not a pencil sketch, but a full painting. Watercolors, rich and layered, depicting a forest at twilight. The trees were tall and dark, their branches reaching toward a sky filled with stars. And scattered throughout the painting, barely visible unless you looked closely, were small wooden stars hanging from the branches like ornaments. "He painted this a month before he died," Elena said. "The nurses told me he worked on it every day. Wouldn't let anyone see it until it was finished." She traced her finger along the edge of the canvas. "They gave it to me at the funeral. I looked at it once, then packed it away." Logan stared at the painting. There was something alive in it, something that moved even though the image was still. The stars seemed to glow. The trees seemed to breathe. "It's beautiful," he said. "It's unfinished," Elena corrected. She pointed to the bottom right corner, where the paint faded into bare canvas. "He ran out of time." Logan looked at the empty space, at the promise of something that would never be completed, and felt the weight of it settle in his chest. "We should hang it in the center," he said. "When it's built. Put it somewhere everyone can see it." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yeah, we should." They spent the next hour going through boxes, pulling out Theo's things. More drawings, dozens of sketchbooks filled with images Logan couldn't decipher. A collection of carved wooden animals, a deer, a fox, a bird with outstretched wings. Books on art and architecture and sign language. Pages dog-eared and annotated in Theo's careful handwriting. A shoebox full of photographs, most of them of other kids at the facility, all of them smiling. "He took these?" Logan asked, holding up a photo of a girl in a wheelchair, laughing at something off camera. Elena nodded. "He loved photography," said it was another way of drawing, capturing what he saw. Logan flipped through the photos. Kids playing, reading, sleeping, staff members caught mid-laugh, windows filled with sunlight, small moments that most people wouldn't think to preserve. At the bottom of the box was a photo that made Logan stop. It was him, sitting in the community center, head bowed, hands folded in his lap. He looked exhausted, broken, the way he'd felt back then, before Theo had taught him how to breathe again. "When did he take this?" Logan asked, his voice rough. Elena looked at the photo, and her expression softened. "Probably the first day you met. He always photographed people when they weren't looking. Said that's when they were most real." Logan stared at his own face, at the evidence of who he'd been. He barely recognized that version of himself. "Can I keep this?" he asked. "It's yours," Elena said. They packed everything back up except the painting, which Elena carefully wrapped in bubble wrap and loaded into her car. As they were locking up the storage unit, Logan's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Pierce, this is David Chen. I've been thinking about your project." Logan put the phone on speaker so Elena could hear. "Yeah?" "I think I was approaching it wrong," David said. "I was trying to make the drawing fit into conventional architecture. But what you're asking for isn't conventional. It's something else." He paused. "I want to try again. Not in 3 days. Tomorrow. Can you meet me at the site?" Logan looked at Elena. She nodded. "We'll be there," Logan said. David hung up. Logan and Elena stood in the parking lot of the storage facility, the sun setting behind the warehouse buildings, casting long shadows across the asphalt. "He gets it," Elena said quietly. "Maybe," Logan said, "or maybe he just wants the commission. Either way, we're building this thing." Logan smiled. "Yeah, we are." The next morning, they met David at the lot downtown. He'd brought a junior architect with him, a woman named Sarah who looked fresh out of grad school and slightly terrified. David had a tablet in his hand, sketches already loaded, and there was an energy about him that hadn't been there before. "I stayed up all night," he said by way of greeting. "Looked at every one of those drawings you gave me, and I think I understand what your son was trying to say." Elena went very still. What was he trying to say? David pulled up an image on his tablet, a 3D rendering of a building that looked like it had grown out of the earth rather than been constructed on it. The walls curved instead of meeting at right angles. The windows were large and irregularly shaped, positioned to capture specific angles of light. The entrance was exactly like Theo's drawing, wide, welcoming, more opening than door. He was trying to say that buildings should feel alive, David said. Not like boxes we put people in, like living things that breathe and change and respond to the people inside them. Logan felt something catch in his throat. The conventional approach would be to build a rectangular structure, divide it into rooms, maximize efficiency, David continued, but that's not what you want. You want a space that moves with people, that adapts. So I'm proposing something radical, a modular design with flexible walls, adjustable lighting, acoustic panels that can be reconfigured based on need. Every room can become whatever the people in it need it to be. Sarah stepped forward, pulled up another image on her own tablet. We're also proposing natural materials, wood, stone, lots of glass. The idea is to blur the line between inside and outside, make it feel less like a building and more like an extension of the park next door. Elena was staring at the renderings, her hand pressed to her mouth. Logan watched her, saw the moment she recognized what she was looking at. Not just a building. Theo's vision, translated into something real. How much? Elena asked, her voice thick. David named a figure that made Logan's stomach drop. It was more than he made in 5 years. But Elena didn't even blink. Done, she said. When can you start? David smiled. Permits will take a few months, but we can break ground by spring. They shook hands, talked details, set up follow-up meetings. Logan stood off to the side, watching it all happen, feeling like he was watching someone else's life unfold. This didn't happen to people like him. He fixed leaky sinks and replaced broken toilets. He didn't build monuments to dead children. But here he was. After David and Sarah left, Logan and Elena stood alone on the empty lot. The weeds had been cleared away in preparation, leaving nothing but dirt and the skeletal remains of the old foundation. Logan could almost see it. The building rising from the ground, the windows glowing, people walking through that wide opening into something better. I need to tell you something, Elena said. Logan turned to look at her. I'm scared, she said. Terrified, actually. Because what if we build this thing and it doesn't work? What if kids don't come, or it's not what they need, or I've just built an expensive monument to my own guilt? Then we'll fix it, Logan said. We'll tear it down and build something else. We'll keep trying until we get it right. You sound very confident for someone who builds things for a living and knows how often they fall apart. Logan laughed, surprised by the sound. I'm not confident. I'm just stubborn. And so are you, or you wouldn't be doing this. Elena smiled, small and real. Theo was stubborn too. Wouldn't take his medicine sometimes. The nurses had to trick him into it. What did they do? Mixed it into chocolate milk. Worked every time. She shook her head. He knew what they were doing, but he pretended he didn't because it made them happy. Logan thought about that. A dying kid pretending to be fooled so the adults around him could feel useful. The generosity of it made his chest ache. He would have liked you, Elena said suddenly. You think? I know, you're real. He hated fake people, could spot them a mile away. She looked at Logan. You're a good father. He would have respected that. Logan didn't know what to say. He'd spent so many years feeling like he was failing Mason, drowning in the impossible task of being enough. Hearing someone say he was good at it felt wrong, uncomfortable, like putting on a shirt that didn't fit. I'm not, though, he said quietly. Good at it. I mess up constantly. Forget permission slips. Feed him cereal for dinner, lose my temper over stupid stuff. And you show up anyway, Elena said. Every day. That's what matters. That's what Theo never had. The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Logan's phone buzzed, a text from the babysitter. Mason's asking for you. Everything's fine. He just wants to know when you'll be home. Logan showed Elena the text. She read it and smiled. Go, she said. I'll handle the rest of the paperwork with David. You sure? Yeah, your kid needs you. That's more important than zoning permits. Logan nodded, started toward his truck, then stopped and turned back. Elena? She looked up. Thank you, he said, for letting me be part of this. Elena's eyes went soft. Thank you for knowing my son when I didn't. Logan drove home through afternoon traffic, his mind still full of renderings and paint-stained canvas and photographs of people caught in unguarded moments. When he walked through the door, Mason launched himself off the couch and crashed into Logan's legs, wrapping his arms around his father's waist. Logan knelt down, and Mason signed rapidly. Where were you? I was worried. I'm sorry, Logan signed back. I was working on something important, but I'm here now. Mason studied his father's face, then signed, Are you sad? Logan thought about it. Was he sad? He'd spent the day sorting through a dead child's belongings, planning a building that wouldn't exist for months, confronting truths about fatherhood and failure that he'd been avoiding for years. No, he signed. I'm not sad. I'm hopeful. Mason didn't know that sign. Logan had to fingerspell it, and even then the kid looked confused. Hope wasn't something they talked about much in their house. They talked about schedules and homework and what to have for dinner. Hope was too abstract, too far away. But Logan was feeling it anyway. That night, after Mason was asleep, Logan sat at the kitchen table and looked at the photograph Theo had taken of him. The broken man in the folding chair, head bowed, carrying weight he didn't know how to put down. Logan barely remembered that day. But Theo had seen it, had captured it, had looked at that image and decided Logan was worth saving. Logan pulled out his phone and texted Elena. Do you think he knew that he was dying? The response came a minute later. Yes, he always knew. He just didn't let it stop him. Logan stared at those words for a long time. Then he put the phone down, walked to Mason's room, and stood in the doorway watching his son sleep. The wooden star pennant rose and fell with each breath, catching the light from the hallway. Logan thought about Theo's hands carving that pendant, thought about the hours it must have taken, the care he'd put into smoothing every edge. And he thought about the fact that Theo had done it knowing he'd never see Mason wear it, that he'd made something beautiful for a future he wouldn't be part of. That was hope. Real hope. The kind that didn't need guarantees or happy endings. The kind that just needed action. Logan walked back to the kitchen, pulled out a notebook, and started writing. Not a plan exactly. More like a promise. A list of things he wanted the center to be, to do, to mean. He wrote until his hand cramped and the coffee pot was empty and the sky outside started to lighten with dawn. When he finally stopped, he had 5 pages of messy handwriting and a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He was going to build something that mattered. Not for himself, not even for Mason, for Theo, for Elena, for every kid who'd ever felt invisible. And he was going to get it right. The permits took longer than 3 months. It took 7, actually. And by the time the city finally approved the plans, Logan had memorized every line of the architectural drawings, and Elena had gone through 3 different contractors before finding one who wouldn't treat them like they were insane. The winning bid came from a woman named Carmen Rodriguez, who'd built her company from nothing and had a daughter with cerebral palsy. She looked at Theo's drawings and said, "When do we start?" They broke ground on a Tuesday in October. The morning was cold, the sky gray and threatening rain, but Elena insisted on being there anyway. Logan brought Mason, who'd asked to skip school for this. The kid stood at the edge of the lot, watching the excavator tear into the earth, his hands moving in small, excited gestures. Carmen stood beside Elena, pointing at different sections of the property, explaining the timeline. Foundation takes 3 weeks if the weather holds, framing another month. After that, it's systems, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. You're looking at 8 months minimum before we're talking about finishing work. 8 months, Elena repeated. She looked smaller than usual, wrapped in a wool coat that was too big for her, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Logan wondered if she'd slept. Probably not. He hadn't either. Could be longer, Carmen warned. This design is complicated. The curved walls, the modular systems, it's all custom work. Nothing's coming out of a catalog. I don't care how long it takes, Elena said. I care that it's right. Carmen smiled. Then we'll get along fine. The excavator's engine roared and a chunk of earth came up, dark and wet. Mason tugged on Logan's sleeve, signed, "What are they doing?" "Making space," Logan signed back, "for something new." Mason watched for a moment, then signed, "For kids like me?" Logan felt his throat tighten. "Yeah, buddy, for kids like you." Mason nodded, satisfied, and went back to watching. Logan glanced at Elena and found her staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Not quite gratitude, not quite grief. Something in between. The first month was just machinery and mud. Logan came by the site every few days after work, still in his paint-stained jeans and work boots, just to watch the progress. The hole got deeper, the foundation started to take shape, and slowly the thing that had only existed in drawings began to exist in concrete and steel. Elena was there more often than Logan. Some days he'd arrive and find her sitting in her car in the parking lot, staring at the construction through the windshield like she was afraid to get closer. Other days she'd be right in the middle of it all, hard hat on, asking Carmen questions about load-bearing walls and drainage systems. One afternoon in November, Logan found her standing alone at the edge of the foundation, looking down into the space where the main entrance would eventually be. It had rained that morning, and the bottom was filled with muddy water that reflected the gray sky. "You okay?" Logan asked. Elena didn't turn around. "I keep thinking about what he'd say. If he could see this." "He'd probably have notes," Logan said. "Kids always do." That got a small smile. "Yeah. He'd tell me the windows are positioned wrong or the entrance is 3 degrees off from his drawing." She paused. "But I think he'd be happy, don't you?" Logan looked at the foundation, at the skeleton of what would become Theo's legacy. "I think he'd be proud of you." Elena's face crumpled. She turned away quickly, but not before Logan saw the tears. He stood beside her, not touching, just present, the way Theo had once stood beside him. After a long silence, Elena spoke again. "I got a call yesterday, from the facility where Theo stayed. They're shutting down." Logan frowned. "Why?" "Funding cuts. They're moving the remaining patients to a state facility an hour away." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The director called to let me know. Said she thought I'd want to hear it from her instead of reading about it in the paper." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. That place was awful. Clean, professional, expensive, but awful. The staff did their best, but it wasn't a home. It was a warehouse for sick kids nobody knew what to do with." Elena's voice hardened. "Theo deserved better. They all did." Logan thought about the photographs Theo had taken, the kids smiling in spite of everything. "Is there anything we can do for the kids being moved?" Elena looked at him, something fierce sparking in her eyes. "Actually, yeah, there is." 2 weeks later, Logan found himself in a government office building downtown, sitting in an uncomfortable chair while Elena argued with a woman behind a desk. The woman, her nameplate said Linda Vickers, case manager, had the exhausted look of someone who'd been fighting bureaucracy for 20 years and was losing. "Miss Ward, I understand your concern, but the decision has been made. The patients from Riverside Care Facility will be transferred to Meadowbrook State on December 1st. The transition plan is already in motion." "Meadowbrook is an hour away from their families," Elena said. Her voice was calm, but Logan could hear the steel underneath. "These kids are already isolated. You're making it worse." "I don't have another option," Linda said. She sounded genuinely sorry. "Riverside is closing. Meadowbrook is the only facility with capacity." What if there was another option? Linda looked up, suspicious. "What kind of option?" "A private facility, fully licensed, fully staffed, designed specifically for children with complex needs, opening in 8 months. Linda's eyebrows went up. "You're talking about the center you're building. You know about it?" "Everyone in this department knows about it. You've been calling every office in the building trying to fast-track permits." Linda leaned back in her chair. "Look, I think what you're doing is admirable, but that center isn't open yet. These kids need placement now." "So, place them temporarily at Meadowbrook," Elena said, "with the understanding that they'll transfer to our facility when it opens. Give the families a choice. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple," Elena interrupted, "unless there's a regulation that says it's not. Is there?" Linda hesitated. Logan could see her running through policy manuals in her head, looking for the clause that would let her say no, but she couldn't find it. "I'd need documentation," Linda said finally. "Proof that your facility will be ready, licensing guarantees, staffing plans, insurance. The list is long, Ms. Ward." "I'll have everything on your desk by Monday." Linda looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Elena's expression stopped her. "Fine, Monday. But if any piece of that paperwork is missing, the transfer to Meadowbrook stands. No extensions." "Understood." They left the building and stood on the sidewalk in the cold November wind. Elena was already pulling out her phone, scrolling through contacts. "You know you just promised to have 8 months of work done in a weekend, right?" Logan said. "I know. And that's impossible." "Probably." Elena looked up from her phone. "You busy this weekend?" Logan thought about his schedule. He'd planned to replace the bathroom tile in his apartment, maybe take Mason to the movies. Normal stuff. Stuff that didn't involve fighting government bureaucracy. "No," he said. "I'm free." Elena smiled, the first real one he'd seen from her in weeks. "Good, because I'm going to need help." They spent the weekend in Elena's living room, surrounded by paperwork and coffee cups and the accumulated evidence of trying to build something impossible. Elena had converted her dining room into a makeshift office, one wall covered in architectural drawings, another with spreadsheets and timelines and licensing requirements. It looked like the workspace of someone losing their mind or finding their purpose. Logan wasn't sure which. Mason was there too, sitting at the coffee table with a pile of Legos, building structures that defied physics, while the adults waded through red tape. Every so often, he'd hold up a creation and show it to Logan, who'd give him a thumbs up without really looking. The kid didn't seem to mind. "Okay," Elena said, checking something off her list. "We've got the architectural plans, the contractor's license, proof of insurance, the safety inspection schedule. What are we missing?" Logan looked at his own list. "Staffing plan. They want names, credentials, background checks. We don't have staff yet." "I know." Elena rubbed her temples. It was almost midnight. They'd been at this for 14 hours straight, surviving on takeout and determination. "Can we hire people we haven't interviewed?" "Technically, yes. We just need commitments, letters of intent or something." "From who? We haven't even posted job listings." Logan thought about it. What about the staff from Riverside? The ones losing their jobs when it closes? They've already got the credentials, the experience, and they know the kids. Elena looked at him like he'd just solved a math problem she'd been working on for years. "That's brilliant. It's practical. Same thing." She grabbed her phone. "I'm calling the director, now." "It's midnight. She'll answer." And she did. Logan listened to Elena's side of the conversation, watched her pace the living room while she explained the plan. After 20 minutes, Elena hung up and turned to Logan with an expression that was equal parts exhausted and triumphant. "She's in. She's emailing me the contact info for every staff member who wants to transfer. We'll have letters of intent by tomorrow afternoon." Logan felt something loosen in his chest. "We're actually going to do this." "Yeah," Elena said. "We are." Mason had fallen asleep on the couch, his half-finished Lego structure still clutched in one hand. Logan picked him up carefully, felt the familiar weight of his son against his chest. The wooden star pendant pressed against Logan's collarbone, warm from the boy's skin. "I should get him home," Logan said quietly. Elena nodded. She looked wrecked, hair falling out of its bun, mascara smudged, wearing the same clothes she'd had on that morning, but there was life in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Thank you," she said. "For this? For all of it." "You're the one doing the impossible," Logan said. "I'm just carrying the heavy stuff." "You're doing more than that." Elena's voice was soft. "You're keeping me sane, keeping me focused. I couldn't do this alone." Logan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and carried his son to the car. On the drive home, he thought about the past few months, about how his life had changed since that first meeting in Elena's classroom. He'd gone from being a single father just trying to survive each day to being part of something bigger, something that mattered. And the strange thing was, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like purpose. Monday morning, Elena delivered a 3-inch thick binder to Linda Vickers' office. Logan went with her, mostly for moral support, but also because he wanted to see Linda's face when she realized they'd actually done it. Linda flipped through the binder, her expression carefully neutral. She checked the architectural plans, the insurance documents, the letters of intent from Riverside's staff. She spent a long time on the licensing section, looking for holes, for anything she could use to say no. She didn't find anything. "This is comprehensive," Linda admitted. "I told you it would be," Elena said. Linda closed the binder and looked at Elena with something that might have been respect. "I'll submit this to the review board. If everything checks out, and I mean everything, we can start the temporary placement process. The families will have to agree to the transfer plan." "They will," Elena said. "You sound very confident." "I am." Linda almost smiled. "You know, Ms. Ward, in this job you see a lot of people who want to help. Most of them give up when they realize how hard it is. But every once in a while you meet someone stubborn enough to actually make a difference." She slid the binder back across the desk. "Don't make me regret this." "I won't." They left the building and stood in the parking lot, and Logan realized Elena was shaking. Not from fear, from relief. "We did it," she said. Her voice was unsteady. "We actually did it." "You did it," Logan corrected. "I just helped." Elena laughed, and it sounded almost hysterical. "I need to sit down." They sat on a bench outside the building, watching government workers come and go, everyone moving through their ordinary Monday with no idea that something extraordinary had just happened. "Can I tell you something?" Elena said after a while. "Sure." "When Theo died, I thought my life was over. Not in the dramatic way people say it. I mean, I actually thought there was no point in continuing, that I'd used up all my purpose on failing him, and there was nothing left." She paused. "But this, building the center, fighting for those kids, it feels like he's giving me a second chance. Like he's saying, you messed up with me, but here's another opportunity. Don't waste it." Logan thought about Theo's journal, about the entry that said he didn't blame her. "I think he'd say you never wasted anything. You just needed time to figure out what mattered." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "You're very wise for a guy who fixes toilets." "I learned from the best," Logan said, and they both knew he was talking about Theo. The next few months were a blur of construction and paperwork and logistics. The building started to take shape. Walls went up, the roof went on, the strange curved windows that had seemed impossible in the drawings became real. Logan was there almost every day, helping where he could. Carmen put him to work doing finish carpentry, installing the custom built-ins that would hold books and art supplies and all the tools kids would need to communicate. Mason started asking questions. "Why are you always there? Why is Ms. Ward always talking about the building? What's it for?" Logan tried to explain. But how do you tell a 6-year-old that his teacher is building a monument to her dead son? That the pendant he wears every day was carved by a boy who knew he was dying? That all of this, the construction, the late nights, the exhaustion, was an attempt to make something good out of something terrible? In the end, Logan just signed, "It's a place where you'll always belong, where everyone will understand you." Mason thought about that, then signed, "Like home?" "Better than home," Logan signed. "Like home with friends." That seemed to satisfy him. By March, the building was nearly finished. The exterior was done, the landscaping was in progress, and the interior was close enough that Carmen was comfortable giving tours. Elena organized a walkthrough for the families from Riverside, the ones whose kids would be transferring once the center opened. Logan watched them move through the space, saw their faces change as they understood what they were looking at. Not a hospital, not a warehouse, a place designed from the ground up to see their children as whole people. One mother stopped in the main room, where Theo's unfinished painting now hung on the wall, and started crying. Elena went to her, put a hand on her shoulder. "It's beautiful," the woman said. "All of it. I didn't think places like this existed." "They didn't," Elena said quietly. "So we built one." The woman looked at her, really looked at her, and Logan saw recognition pass between them. The understanding that only comes from loving someone the world doesn't know how to hold. "Thank you," the woman whispered. Elena just nodded, too emotional to speak. After the families left, Logan and Elena stood alone in the main room. The space was huge, bright with natural light from those impossible windows, the floors made of warm wood that felt alive under your feet. It looked exactly like Theo's drawing, not despite the architectural challenges, but because of them. He was right, Logan said, about all of it. Elena walked to the painting, stood in front of it. The unfinished corner seemed to glow in the afternoon light. I used to hate this part, she said, gesturing at the bare canvas. The incompleteness. But now I think he meant it that way. Like he was saying, I started this, but you have to finish it. So finish it, Logan said. Elena turned to look at him, surprised. Paint it, Logan said. The rest of the forest, the rest of the stars, make it whole. I'm not an artist, I can't. You don't have to be Theo. You just have to be you. Logan walked over to stand beside her. He gave you the beginning. You give it the ending. Elena stared at the painting for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and took a picture of it. I'll think about it. That night, Logan got a text from her. I bought paint. This is a terrible idea. He texted back, probably, do it anyway. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, Elena called Logan and told him to come to the center. When he arrived with Mason, he found her in the main room with Carmen and half a dozen other people, staff from Riverside, volunteers from the community, parents of kids who'd be attending. They'd set up scaffolding in front of Theo's painting, and Elena was standing on the platform, wearing paint-stained overalls and holding a brush. What's happening? Logan asked. We're finishing it, Elena said. Together. And they did. For the next 6 hours, people took turns climbing the scaffolding and adding to the painting. Not professionals, just people who cared. They painted more trees, more stars, more sky. The work was imperfect, brushstrokes visible, colors not quite matching Theo's original palette. But that was the point. This wasn't about recreating what he'd done. It was about continuing it. Mason climbed up too, Logan helping him balance on the platform, and the boy carefully painted a small wooden star in the corner where the canvas had been bare. His hand shook, and the star was crooked, but Elena stood beside him and signed, perfect. When they finally finished, everyone stepped back to look at it. The painting was different now. Messier, more human, but complete. Elena stood in front of it with tears running down her face. Thank you, she said to everyone assembled. Thank you for helping me finish what he started. Logan put his hand on her shoulder and she leaned into him slightly, just enough to let him know she wasn't alone. The center opened in May. They'd planned a small ceremony, ribbon cutting, some speeches, nothing elaborate. But word had spread, and by the time the event started, there were over 100 people gathered outside. Families from Riverside, staff members, community members who'd watched the construction and wanted to see the result, local news cameras. Even David Chen showed up with Sarah, both of them looking proud. Elena stood at the entrance with a pair of scissors, the wide opening that looked just like Theo's drawing behind her. She was supposed to give a speech, but when she opened her mouth, nothing came out. Logan stepped up beside her. You want me to do it? Elena shook her head. She took a breath, tried again. This building exists because of my son, she said. Her voice was quiet, but everyone leaned in to listen. Theo Ward. He died 3 years ago, and I wasn't there. I was somewhere else, doing something that seemed important at the time but wasn't, and I thought that was the end of the story, that I'd failed him and there was no way to make it right. She paused, looked at the building behind her. But then I met someone who knew Theo, who'd learned from him, who'd been saved by him. She glanced at Logan. And I realized that Theo's story didn't end when he died. It just changed shape, became something bigger, something that could touch people he never met. Elena held up the scissors. This center isn't a monument to my guilt. It's a continuation of my son's work. Every kid who walks through this door, every family that finds belonging here, that's Theo, still teaching, still seeing, still making the world a little bit better than he found it. She cut the ribbon and the crowd applauded. People started flowing through the entrance, exploring the space. Logan watched Mason run ahead with other kids, all of them signing to each other, finding the rooms designed for them. The sensory-friendly spaces, the quiet corners, The wide hallways built for wheelchairs and walkers. The light that shifted and changed based on need. A woman approached Logan. She was older, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing a Riverside staff badge on a lanyard around her neck. "You're Logan Pierce," she said. "Yeah." "I'm Dr. Margaret Reyes. I was Theo's primary physician at Riverside." Logan felt his breath catch. "You knew him?" "For 4 years." Dr. Reyes smiled, sad and fond. "He talked about you, near the end, said he'd met someone who reminded him why people were worth helping." Logan's throat went tight. "He said that?" "He said a lot of things, most of them wise beyond his years." Dr. Reyes looked around at the center, at the kids exploring and the families crying with relief. He'd be happy, not proud. Happiness was always more important to him than pride, but happy that his work continued. "I hope so," Logan managed. Dr. Reyes reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. It was Theo, older than Logan remembered, sitting in a wheelchair with a sketchbook in his lap. He was smiling at the camera, and despite the oxygen tube in his nose and the pallor of his skin, his eyes were bright. "I thought you should have this, she said, a reminder of who he was at the end. Still creating, still believing things could be better. Logan took the photograph with shaking hands. "Thank you." Dr. Reyes nodded and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Logan stood there holding the photo, watching Elena move through the space, greeting families, showing them the rooms, the resources, the possibility. She looked different now, lighter, like she'd finally put down a weight she'd been carrying for years. Mason ran up, tugged on Logan's sleeve. "Can I come here? After school?" Logan looked at his son, at the wooden star pendant around his neck, at the hope in his face. "Yeah, buddy," he signed. "This place is yours." Mason grinned and ran off to join the other kids. Logan looked down at the photograph in his hands, at Theo's bright eyes and knowing smile, and he realized that Elena had been right. The story hadn't ended. It had just changed shape, become something bigger, something that would keep moving forward long after all of them were gone. The center didn't fix everything. Logan learned that in the first month. He'd had this idea, stupid maybe, but persistent, that once the building opened, everything would fall into place. The kids would thrive, the families would find peace, and all the broken pieces would somehow fit together into something whole. But life didn't work that way. Some kids adapted immediately, found their people, bloomed in the space Theo had envisioned. Others struggled. One boy refused to leave his mother's side for 3 weeks straight, terrified of the new environment. A girl with autism had a meltdown every time someone turned on the overhead lights, and it took the staff 2 months to realize she needed a different kind of bulb. There were fights, tears, setbacks that felt like failures, and Elena took every single one of them personally. Logan found her in her office one night in late June, almost 2 months after the opening. It was past 9. The building officially closed for the day, but her car was still in the parking lot. He knocked on the door frame, and she looked up from her laptop, startled. "You're still here," Logan said. "So are you." "I'm fixing the sink in the bathroom. What's your excuse?" Elena rubbed her eyes. She looked exhausted, hollowed out. "Marcus's parents called. They're pulling him out, said this place isn't helping." Logan knew Marcus, 8 years old, non-verbal, prone to bolting when he got overwhelmed. The staff had been working with him on communication devices, trying to find something that clicked. Apparently they hadn't found it yet. "Did they say why?" Logan asked. "Because he's not getting better. That's what the father said. We thought this place would fix him." Elena's voice was bitter. "Like Theo built a miracle factory, and I'm just operating it poorly." Logan pulled up a chair and sat down. "You can't fix people, Elena. That's not what this place is for." "Then what is it for?" She wasn't being rhetorical. She genuinely wanted an answer. Logan thought about it. "It's for seeing them, all the way. Not who they might become or who we wish they were, just who they are right now. And if who they are right now is struggling, then we see that too." Elena stared at him for a long moment, then closed her laptop. "I'm tired, Logan. I'm tired of fighting, tired of not being enough, tired of feeling like I'm failing Theo all over again." "You're not failing him." "How do you know?" Her voice cracked. Maybe I built this whole thing for the wrong reasons. Maybe I'm just trying to absolve myself of guilt, and all these kids are paying the price for my therapy project. Logan leaned forward. You want to know what I think? Not really, but you're going to tell me anyway. I think you're human. And humans mess up. We build things for complicated reasons. We fail more than we succeed, and we spend most of our lives stumbling around trying to figure out what matters. He paused. But that doesn't mean the work isn't real. This place is real. The kids who are thriving here, they're real. And Marcus's parents pulling him out doesn't erase any of that. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I wanted it to be perfect. For Theo. I wanted to build something he'd be proud of. He would be proud of you, Logan said. Not because it's perfect, because you tried. Elena wiped her face with the heel of her hand. You're annoyingly wise for someone who showed up to fix a sink. The sink can wait, Logan said. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the June night was warm, cicadas buzzing in the trees Carmen had planted along the property line. The building felt alive around them, even empty, like it was breathing. Can I show you something? Elena asked suddenly. Sure. She led him through the darkened building to the main room where Theo's painting hung. In the dim emergency lighting, the forest looked different, deeper, more mysterious. The stars scattered through the trees seemed to pulse. Elena walked to the painting and ran her fingers along the bottom edge, where Mason's crooked star sat in permanent marker testimony to a 6-year-old's careful hand. I've been thinking about what you said, Elena said quietly, about finishing what Theo started, and I realized something. She turned to look at Logan. It's never going to be finished, not really, because what he started wasn't a building or a program, it was a way of seeing, and that's ongoing. Every kid who walks through that door, every family who finds belonging here, that's the work continuing, not ending. Logan felt something shift in his chest. So you're okay with it being messy? I'm learning to be. Elena smiled, small and genuine. Slowly. They walked back through the building together. Logan showed her the sink he'd been fixing, a slow leak that had been driving the janitorial staff crazy. Elena watched him work for a while, asking questions about washers and pipe fittings that she definitely didn't care about but asked anyway because it was easier than sitting alone with her thoughts. When Logan finished, they stood in the bathroom doorway, and Elena said, Do you ever wonder what your life would look like if you'd never met Theo? Logan thought about it. All the time. And? I'd probably still be drowning, still trying to figure out how to talk to my son, still feeling like I was failing every day. He looked at her. What about you? I'd probably still be running a consulting firm, making money I didn't need, impressing people who didn't matter. I'd be successful and miserable and completely alone. She paused. So I guess we both owe him. More than we can ever repay, Logan agreed. Elena locked up the building, and they walked to the parking lot together. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Logan thought about Theo's painting, about all those wooden stars hanging from impossible trees. I'm glad you're here, Elena said suddenly. Not just tonight, in general. I couldn't do this without you. You could, Logan said. But I'm glad I'm here too. They stood by their cars for a moment longer, neither of them quite ready to leave. Then Elena's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, read the message, and her face changed. What? Logan asked. It's Marcus's mother. She says she wants to meet, tomorrow, to talk about giving the center another chance. Logan smiled. See? Not everything's broken. Not everything, Elena agreed. The summer passed in a blur of adjustments and small victories. Marcus came back, and the staff finally found a communication system that worked for him. A combination of pictures and simple signs that he could use to express basic needs. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Mason flourished. The kid who'd spent his first years feeling isolated now had friends who understood him without effort. He came home every day with stories Logan had to piece together from rapid-fire signing, tales of games played and jokes shared, and the casual belonging that came from being seen. One evening in August, Mason asked Logan a question that stopped him cold. Do you think the person who made my necklace would like me? Logan sat down on the edge of Mason's bed, trying to figure out how to answer. Why do you ask? Because Ms. Ward says he made it for me, but he never met me. So how did he know I'd like it? Logan looked at the wooden star pendant resting against Mason's chest, worn smooth from years of constant wear. He didn't know you, Logan signed slowly, but he knew what you'd need. Someone who saw you, someone who understood. Like you? Mason signed. Like all of us, Logan signed back. Mason thought about that, his small face serious. Then he signed, I wish I could tell him thank you. Logan's throat went tight. Me too, buddy. That weekend, Logan found himself back at Elena's house, helping her sort through more of Theo's things. She'd finally worked up the courage to go through the rest of the boxes from storage, and she didn't want to do it alone. They sat on her living room floor surrounded by sketchbooks and carved wooden animals and photographs of people Theo had loved. Elena picked up each item carefully, like it might shatter if she held it wrong. I found something, she said after a while. She handed Logan a letter, handwritten on lined paper, the edges worn from being folded and unfolded. Dear Mom, it started. I'm writing this because I don't think I'll have the courage to say it out loud. I know you're trying. I know you think the money and the doctors and the fancy facility are helping, and maybe they are. But what I really want is just you. Here, sitting next to me. Even if we don't talk, even if there's nothing to say, I just want to know you chose to be here instead of somewhere else. Logan felt his eyes burn. He kept reading. I'm not mad at you. I know you think I am, but I'm not. I'm just sad. Because I'm running out of time, and we're running out of chances to know each other. And when I'm gone, I don't want you to spend your whole life feeling guilty. I want you to take all that energy you put into work and put it into something that matters. Help people. See them. Be present. That's all I ever wanted from you. That's all anyone wants. The letter was signed with Theo's name and dated 2 weeks before he died. Elena was crying silently, tears running down her face without sound. Logan set the letter down and moved to sit beside her. He forgave you, Logan said quietly. I don't know if I can forgive myself, Elena whispered. He didn't ask you to. He asked you to do something that matters. Logan gestured at the boxes, at the accumulated evidence of a short life lived with intention. And you did. You are. Elena leaned against him, and Logan put his arm around her shoulders. They sat like that for a long time, two people trying to carry the weight of a boy who'd understood things they were still learning. After a while, Elena pulled away and wiped her face. I want to do something for his birthday, September 12th. Something at the center. What did you have in mind? I don't know yet. Something that celebrates him. Not the tragedy of losing him, but the gift of having known him. She looked at Logan. Will you help me plan it? Of course. They spent the next few weeks organizing what Elena insisted on calling a gathering, not a memorial. She invited everyone who'd known Theo, staff from Riverside, families whose kids now attended the center, even the janitor from the community center where Logan had first met him. She asked people to bring something Theo had given them, whether physical or intangible. A drawing, a memory, a lesson. The day before the gathering, Logan got a package in the mail. No return address, just his name and the center's location written in careful handwriting. Inside was a sketchbook he'd never seen before, wrapped in brown paper with a note attached. Mr. Pierce, the note read, I found this in Theo's room after he passed. I've been holding on to it, not sure what to do with it. But after seeing what you and Ms. Ward have built, I think Theo would want you to have it. Dr. Margaret Reyes. Logan opened the sketchbook with shaking hands. The pages were filled with drawings of people. The community center, the support group, the quiet corners where Theo had sat and observed. And there, scattered throughout, were drawings of Logan, sitting in a folding chair, head bowed, standing by the window, looking lost, kneeling beside Theo, hands moving through a sign. In every drawing, Logan looked broken, but in each successive image, something shifted. His shoulders straightened, his expression opened. By the last drawing, Logan was smiling, signing something to an invisible companion, and underneath Theo had written in small, precise letters, He's going to be okay. Logan closed the sketchbook and sat very still, trying to breathe through the wave of emotion crashing over him. Theo had seen him, really seen him, had documented his transformation with the same careful attention he'd given everything else. And he'd believed Logan would be okay. Logan brought the sketchbook to the gathering. When Elena saw it, she cried for 10 minutes straight, then laughed, then cried again. They decided to display it on a table near Theo's painting, along with all the other things people brought: carved animals, photographs, letters, small testimonies to a life that had mattered. The gathering itself was nothing like Logan expected. He'd thought it would be somber, heavy with grief. And there was grief. You could feel it in the room like a physical presence. But there was also joy, laughter, people sharing stories about Theo's dry sense of humor, his uncanny ability to know what people needed before they knew it themselves, the way he'd made everyone around him feel seen. Mason stood in front of the group at one point, signing while Logan translated. "I never met the person who made my necklace, but I wear it every day because it reminds me that someone saw me before I was born. Someone believed I mattered, and now I want to see other people the same way." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Afterward, when most people had left and it was just Logan and Elena and a few staff members cleaning up, Elena stood in front of Theo's painting one more time. "I've been thinking about something," she said, "about what Theo wrote in that letter, about being present." Logan waited. "I've spent the last year building this place, fighting for these kids, trying to create something good out of something terrible. And all of that was necessary. But I realized I've been so focused on the big picture that I've been missing the small moments, the daily connections, the quiet ways people help each other." "What are you saying?" Logan asked. "I'm saying I want to teach again, not just run the center, actually teach, work directly with the kids." She looked at Logan. "Is that crazy? To step back from the administrative stuff and just be present?" "It's what Theo asked you to do," Logan said. "So no, not crazy." Elena smiled, and it was the most peaceful expression Logan had seen on her face. "Okay, then that's what I'll do." She did. Over the next few months, Elena transitioned most of the administrative work to other staff and started teaching 3 classes a week at the center. Logan would see her in the hallways with kids clustered around her, signing and laughing, finally doing the thing she'd trained for, finally being present. Mason was in one of her classes. He came home one day and signed to Logan, "Ms. Ward told us about her son today, the one who made my necklace. She said he believed everyone deserves to be seen, even when it's hard." "What do you think about that?" Logan signed. "I think he was right," Mason signed, "and I think Miss Ward is trying to see us the way he did." Logan felt pride swell in his chest. His son understood, really understood. The center grew. By the end of the first year, they'd served over 50 kids and their families. Some stayed for months, others just a few weeks. Some thrived, others struggled. But everyone who walked through those doors was seen, fully and completely, in a way that Theo would have recognized. Logan eventually quit his handyman business and came to work at the center full-time, managing facilities and helping with the hands-on stuff that kept the building running. It paid less than freelancing, but it mattered more. And Mason got to see his father every day, got to understand that work could be about more than survival. One afternoon in late spring, almost a year after the center opened, Logan was replacing a light fixture in one of the classrooms when he heard someone call his name. He turned to find an older man standing in the doorway, maybe 60, with gray hair and kind eyes. "Logan Pierce?" the man asked. "That's me. I'm Richard Ward, Elena's father." Logan climbed down from the ladder, wiped his hands on his jeans. "Nice to meet you, sir." "I wanted to thank you," Richard said, "for what you've done for my daughter." Logan felt uncomfortable with the gratitude. "I haven't done anything. This is all Elena." "That's not what she tells me." Richard looked around the classroom at the adaptive furniture and sensory-friendly lighting. "She says you knew Theo, that you were one of the last people to really see him before he died." "He saw me first," Logan said quietly. "Saved my life, actually." Richard nodded slowly. "That sounds like him. Always trying to help people." He paused. "I wasn't there much either. When he was sick, I was traveling for work, and I thought Elena had it handled. I didn't realize she was falling apart until it was too late." Logan didn't know what to say to that. "But seeing her now," Richard continued, "seeing what she's built, who she's become, it gives me hope. Hope that we can still make things right, even after we've made them terribly wrong. I think that's what Theo would want, Logan said. I think so too. Richard extended his hand. Thank you for being here. For her. For all of this. Logan shook his hand and Richard left. That evening, Logan told Elena about the conversation. She went quiet for a long time, staring out the window of her office at the kids playing in the courtyard below. My dad and I haven't talked much since Theo died, she said finally. I blamed him for not being there. He blamed himself. It was easier to just avoid each other. And now? Logan asked. Now I'm starting to understand that blame doesn't fix anything. It just keeps you stuck. She turned to look at Logan. Theo knew that. He didn't waste time on blame. He just tried to make things better. So that's what we do, Logan said. Yeah, Elena agreed. That's what we do. 2 years after the center opened, they held another gathering for Theo's birthday. This one was bigger, more celebratory. The center was thriving now, a permanent fixture in the community. Kids who'd started there had moved on to mainstream schools, taking with them the confidence that came from being truly seen. New families arrived every month, word spreading about the place where difference wasn't just accepted, but celebrated. Mason was 8 now, taller, more confident, a leader among the other kids. He'd started teaching sign language to hearing kids who wanted to learn, bridging gaps that Logan had once thought were permanent. The wooden star pendant still hung around his neck, but now it was joined by other talismans, friendship bracelets, a small pin one of the other kids had given him, evidence of belonging. At the gathering, Elena stood in front of Theo's painting one more time, but this time, Logan noticed, she wasn't looking at the unfinished corner. She was looking at the whole thing, the original work and the imperfect additions, the professional brushstrokes and the amateur ones, the vision and its continuation. I used to think I had to finish what Theo started, Elena said to the assembled crowd. Had to complete his work, fulfill his vision, make up for all the ways I'd failed him. But I finally understand. The work is never finished. It just keeps going. Every kid who finds belonging here, every family that feels seen, every small kindness exchanged in these hallways, that's Theo's work continuing. Not because I'm completing it, because I'm continuing it. We all are. She looked directly at Logan, and he saw everything in her eyes. Gratitude, grief, hope, determination. The complicated mess of being human and trying anyway. After the gathering, after everyone had left and the building was quiet, Logan found Elena sitting on the floor in the main room, her back against the wall beneath Theo's painting, staring at nothing. He sat down beside her. Didn't say anything, just sat. After a long silence, Elena spoke. Do you think we made a difference? I know we did, Logan said. How can you be sure? Logan thought about Mason, about the way his son moved through the world now with confidence and joy. He thought about the other kids, the families, the small transformations he witnessed every day. And he thought about himself, the broken man in Theo's photograph, compared to who he'd become. Because I'm different, Logan said. Mason's different. You're different. And Theo did that. Not by fixing us, by seeing us. And now we're passing that on. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. I miss him. Me too. But I'm grateful too. Is that weird? To be grateful for someone who died? No, Logan said. I think that's exactly what he'd want. Gratitude instead of grief. Action instead of guilt. They sat there for a long time. Two people who'd been brought together by a boy neither of them had known well enough, building something that would outlast all of them. Eventually, Elena pulled out her phone and showed Logan a message. It was from Marcus's mother, the one who'd almost pulled her son out in those early days. The message included a video of Marcus using his communication device to tell a joke, his face bright with joy as his mother laughed. Thank you for not giving up on him, the message read. Thank you for seeing what we couldn't. Elena's hands were shaking as she put the phone away. This is what matters, right? These moments, these kids, this work. Yeah, Lucas, Logan said. This is exactly what matters. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, time passed the way it does, in a blur of ordinary days punctuated by extraordinary moments. The center became an institution, a model that other cities tried to replicate. Elena wrote grants, gave speeches, trained staff. Logan managed the building, fixed what broke, kept everything running. Mason grew up, went to middle school, then high school, always wearing that wooden star around his neck. And through it all, Theo's presence remained. Not as a ghost or a memory or an abstract concept, but as a living thing, woven into the fabric of the place. Every time someone made the sign he'd invented, hands opening like wings, they were continuing his work. Every time a kid found belonging, he was there. Every time someone chose to see instead of look away, he was there. Logan was 60 when he finally retired from the center. Mason was 32, married, with a daughter of his own, a hearing girl who was learning sign language from her father the same way he'd learned from Logan. The circle continuing. On Logan's last day, the staff threw him a party in the main room. Elena was there, older now, but still fierce, still present. She'd stepped down as director 5 years earlier, but still taught one class a week, unwilling to fully let go. Someone called out. Logan shook his head. He'd never been good at speeches, but Elena was looking at him with an expression that said he didn't have a choice. So he stood up and looked around the room at people who'd become family. "I'm not good at this," he started, and people laughed. "But I want to say something about gratitude, about how a life can change because one person decides to see you, really see you." He looked at Elena. 30 years ago, I was drowning. I had a son I didn't know how to help and a future I couldn't imagine. And then I met a kid in a corner with a sketchbook, and he taught me that connection doesn't require perfection. It just requires presence. Logan's voice cracked. "That kid is gone. Has been for a long time. But his work isn't. Every person in this room is proof that what he started didn't end when he died. It multiplied, spread, became something bigger than any of us." He paused, trying to find the words. "So if you take anything from my time here, take this. See people, all the way. Don't wait for them to be fixed or healed or somehow easier to love. See them as they are, right now, and let them know they matter. Because that's what Theo did for me. That's what this place does for everyone who walks through those doors, and that's what will outlast all of us." The room was silent. Then Elena started clapping, and everyone joined in. After the party, after everyone had left, Logan and Elena stood one more time in front of Theo's painting. It had been restored twice over the years, touched up and protected, the colors as vibrant as the day it was finished. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked. "Giving up your business to work here?" "Not once," Logan said. "Do you regret quitting your firm?" "That wasn't really living anyway," Elena said. "This is living, messy and imperfect and real." Logan smiled. Theo would approve. "Yeah," Elena agreed. "He would." They walked out of the building together into the late afternoon sun. The courtyard was full of kids. A new generation, different faces, but the same needs. Being seen, being known, being enough exactly as they were. Mason's daughter was there too, playing with other kids, her hands moving through signs her father had taught her. She looked up and waved at Logan, and he waved back. "You did good," Elena said quietly. "We did good," Logan corrected. "We did it together." They stood there for a moment longer, watching the future unfold in the form of children who would never know Theo but would benefit from his vision anyway. And Logan thought about the wooden star pendant now worn by Mason's daughter, about how an object could carry meaning across generations, about how love could outlive the person who created it. That night, at home, Logan pulled out Theo's sketchbook one more time. He'd looked at it hundreds of times over the years, but it never got easier. Seeing himself through Theo's eyes, seeing the transformation documented in careful pencil strokes, seeing the note at the end. He's going to be okay. Theo had been right. Logan was okay. More than okay. He'd found purpose, family, belonging, all because a dying kid had decided he was worth saving. Logan closed the sketchbook and set it carefully on the shelf next to the photograph Dr. Reyes had given him. Theo's face, bright-eyed and knowing, looking at something beyond the camera. "Thank you," Logan said aloud to the empty room, "for seeing me, for saving me, for teaching me what matters." The room didn't answer, but Logan felt it anyway. The sense that Theo was there, smiling that crooked smile, hands moving through signs that meant safe and home and you matter. And maybe that was the real lesson. Not that death could be overcome or grief could be erased, but that love, once given, never really ends. It just changes form, becomes action, becomes legacy, becomes the hands of everyone who learned to see because someone first saw them. Logan turned off the light and went to bed. Tomorrow he'd visit the center again, even though he'd retired. He'd watch Elena teach, see Mason bring his daughter, witness the continuation of work that had started in a corner of a community center 30 years ago. The work would continue long after he was gone, after Elena was gone, after everyone who'd known Theo personally had faded into memory. Because that's what happened when you saw people, really saw them. You created something that couldn't die, something that just kept spreading, touching lives, changing the world in small, essential ways. Something that looked, if you squinted just right, exactly like hope.